The Republic of Ghana is fast becoming an economic province of the People's Republic of China. Ghanaians sneer at made in Ghana goods, but we have no shame in accepting handouts and massive loans from the Chinese. Our disdain for honest toil leading to tangible rewards has opened the floodgates for the Chinese to take charge of the commanding heights of our economy. Whatever edifices the Chinese build for us, we need to remember that they are not our friends in need, but are voracious pests for our natural resources. Good evening and welcome to Tarzan's Take. Accra has just hosted a major international conference on Africa-China relations, coinciding with the final approval of a $3 billion loan from China to finance infrastructure projects in Ghana, which loan itself will be paid for from our newfound oil wealth. We need to reflect soberly on, one, how successful has post-independent Africa been in winning itself away from dependency on the former colonies so we could build an integrated and self-sustaining economic system. Can Africa's leaders safeguard the political freedoms and economic interests of their people within the new paradigm of development cooperation with both the West and China? What are China's real intents in Africa? Are they to plunder our natural resources or to build a genuine partnership to achieve a mutual benefits for us both? And what must Africa and China do to avoid traveling down the same exploitative road from the curve up at Berlin to the welcoming embrace of Beijing? Joining me tonight are Professor Kwesi Osei and Professor Anshan Lee, two distinguished participants at the just-ended conference on the Africa-China relations. Join us after a short break for our Wheat from Chap commentary.
July 1, 2013 marks the 43rd anniversary of the occasion when Ghana became a republic, serving the last vestiges of our colonial past by replacing the Queen of England with our own elected president as the head of state of the sovereign nation, in which the supreme powers rest in the body of the citizens entitled to vote and is exercised by representatives chosen directly by the people. When we declared ourselves as a sovereign nation in 1960, the average wealth of our nation measured as gross domestic product per head of population stood at $180.62 US. That of the People's Republic of China was $92.01 US. The latest GDP per capita figure for Ghana is $1,570 US as at 2011, while that of China is $5,445 US. We were twice as wealthy as China in 1960, and now China per capita wealth is more than 3 times that of ours. Ghana's economic development is being underpinned by Chinese money.
Indeed, Ghana and China have enjoyed very friendly and fruitful relations since 1960, during which time Ghana has benefited from various forms of financial and technical assistance from the Chinese government. And I'm sure we're going to be able to enjoy a fruitful working relationship together.
China has offered loans of between 10 to 16 billion US dollars to Ghana to support mainly infrastructure projects of roads, power generation and supply, telecommunications, railways, health and gas gathering and transportation.
Rather, Ghanaians are committed to building a better Ghana. The Chinese people are devoting themselves to building a well-off society in an all-round way with Chinese characteristics. China and Ghana are on the path of developing forward. The Chinese people and its government are ready to work closely with the Ghanaian people and the government to enhance the mutual beneficial cooperation for common development and the prosperity of our two countries.
In the time-worn classical North-South trading agreement, Ghana is paying back these loans through a barter arrangement in which our primary natural resources of cocoa and the recently discovered crude oil are given to China on very generous and advantageous terms. The pattern does not end there. The Chinese have invaded and virtually taken over the small-scale gold mining industry in Ghana, albeit illegally and rather belatedly being chased out now. The retail sector, especially in the rural areas, is slowly and inexorably becoming dominated by Chinese investors. Add all of this to the long-established and expanding Chinese food industry in Ghana, and we can say that Ghana has been overrun and affected by the yellow peril of Chinese economic domination under a neo-colonialist paradigm. Thus, it is that almost 130 years after the 1844 Berlin Conference that brought together 14 European powers and the United States under the Iron Chancellor Bismarck to divide the dark continent for mutually beneficial exploitation of Africa's mineral wealth and, at the same time, create markets for finished goods. The partitioning of Africa into colonial states of influence was to remain largely intact as Africa fought its political liberation and independence from the late 1950s to the early 1990s. Indeed, the present 54 independent states that constitute the African Union, with a singular exception of the recently partitioned South Sudan, are the very identical colonial states that were carved out of the Berlin Conference. The significant difference between then and now is that Berlin produced specific spheres of influence and control for individual Western powers, while Beijing's influence in Africa now is cutting across every single country and quickly dismantling the old past colonial economic stronghold, which has largely remained intact and been a very retarding and negative impediment to Africa's effort to take charge of its own affairs. The opening words of our Constitution boldly proclaim that the sovereignty of Ghana resides in the people of Ghana, in whose name and for whose welfare the powers of government are to be exercised in the manner and within the limits laid down in this Constitution. In other words, we have given full and wholesome affirmation to our country as a modern republican nation, as depicted in our name, the Republic of Ghana. But what does our brand of republic mean in practical terms when those in whom we have entrusted our powers of governance are looking to our development partners to set both the agenda and finance the activities that underpin our social and economic development, which politicians offer themselves as competent and able to handle on our behalf, and for which we give them the mandate of power? Today's reality is that the forcible possession of our people that came out of Berlin has given way to voluntary return to the neo-colonialist arms of the Chinese, who ironically were only half as rich as us when we proclaimed the Republic of Ghana on July 1, 1960. As we mark the 43rd anniversary of the Republic of Ghana, let's stop to reflect on the meaning and import of exercising political choice at elections, only to hand over the control of our life and destiny to the new colonial masters, both states and institutions.
Welcome back. My first guest tonight is Professor Akwasi Osei, who's the head of the Department of History, Political Science, and Philosophy of the Delaware State University. In fact, this week, he's being part of a major conference on Africa and China. Welcome, Pato.
Thank you.
Africa and China, from Berlin to Beijing. At the time of independence, Nkrumah was very clear that the political independence without the economic independence was not going to take us very far, both for Ghana and for Africa as a whole. But clearly, if we are not dependent on China, it did not happen. Why do you think it didn't happen?
Well, before I get into that, I'd like to thank you for extending this invitation to me to opine on these very important issues that are affecting Ghana and the rest of the continent of Africa, especially regarding China's presence on the continent. The first thing one has to say is that the decolonization process was uneven, and in the sense that we only secured what we call flag independence, essentially the space for political activity to happen. But perhaps the engines to creating sustainable societies come out of economic processes, and we did not have control over our economy. We essentially maintained the colonial system, whose structure was designed to serve the external group, not internal. And we didn't change that structure very much when we gained independence. So if you're going to change, you change. You change the structure, you change the logic of what exists. We didn't do that. Now, political independence did take us somewhere. Indeed, we needed the political control in order to effect economic control. But it was very difficult to do because essentially those who controlled it maintained their control.
But I mean, when you say we didn't do that, I mean, there were several attempts, starting with the Lagos Plan of Action, ECOWAS, the various sub-regional groupings, but they are all characterized by a lot of paper talk and very little action.
That's true.
Was that because we were incompetent, or external forces made sure we're incompetent?
Both.
Both, okay.
In fact, both work in tandem. There are certain times when the internal is almost an extension of the external. And this is what I mean. The Ghanaian economy at independence essentially relied on primary products. The Ghanaian economy, 20 years later, was still predicated on producing and providing for the external market primary products. So for 20 years, we didn't change that structure. And if you're going to export the raw material, you can only go so far.
But Nkrumah did set up GIHOC.
Nkrumah set up GIHOC.
To try to add value.
And we'll get to that.
Yes,
Nkrumah did. I was making the point that 20 years on, the essential nature of what we did, the economic activity, we produced the raw, we exported, we get what we need, and then we import what you know. And as long as you do that, you're going to run a deficit, and that's what we did for all that time. Yes, Nkrumah did attempt to change that structure, and therein lies the contradictions of independence. If you're going to change the structure, those who benefit from that structure are going to make sure that you do not succeed. It's not about an independent nation. It's about a condition of benefit to other people. And if they're going to lose that benefit, they're going to do everything they can. That's the external part. That's right. But the internal part, if those of us who are here believe in that same system, because now we're in essentially control of that system, so we benefit from it, we're going to maintain it. So in a sense, I'm saying that, yes, there was a change, but no, there was a continuation of economically the system that was in place. Now, instead of the governor and his people in control, we had our own people in control. And, you know, we essentially moved into their bungalows.
That's right.
And everything else that came with it, you know, the cooks. So it looked good, and it was good for those people, so they maintained that system.
Let's balance that with our own inadequacies.
But that's where I was getting to.
If you want to cross the Togolese border, it takes you maybe 2 or 3 hours.
Yes, and that is, again...
And we still have ECOWAS and free movement of goods and people. Precisely.
Again, that takes us back to the illogic of the decolonization process. The English did their own thing, the French did their own thing without any recourse to the peoples that they were in control of. And so one reason that going from here to Togo becomes an issue is from an English, essentially an English area to a French area. And so, and of course, we're talking about people who are in control of the borders, and over time, as our politics became essentially one of the politics of the belly, everybody at any level try to get a situation where they can benefit from where they are. And so part of that difficulty in crossing boundaries becomes, as we know, border guards who stop our people.
But looking concretely at, let's say, the economic situation, we're sitting here today,
yes,
and I believe maybe 17 countries in West Africa are still dependent and are tied to the French franc.
yes.
How is that going to make it possible for us to achieve even a sub-regional economic integration?
It's, of course, it's a problem that has been in existence ever since ECOWAS was established, and even before that. So I'm not sure that I have the magic bullet to say how we change it. But clearly, the first step is to understand that we have to make a change. I'm not so sure that it's like somebody who's an alcoholic. You got to accept that you have a problem. Perhaps then you can make some progress. But I'm not sure our leadership, when it's all said and done, believe that we really, because we're tied to the franc, it's a problem. If they don't see it a problem, they can never change it. If you think it's a problem, then you change it. I think it's a problem. I think ECOWAS has to have our own ECHO. We should. But the mechanics of getting there has to be at a time when there is more or less a congruence of thinking. And that is what we haven't had in those many years that ECOWAS has been in place.
But, before we switch on to the other side, here we are, Africa, even though we have the AU, a lot of our countries are still more believing in the Francophone grouping and the Commonwealth, and they don't seem to. For example, most African countries will not pay their AU dues. That
was the point I was making earlier. I think essentially we have a problem of leadership. I think I'll have to accept the fact that no matter what our problems used to be, no matter how insistent and persistent they are, ultimately we have to at some point decide this is where we're headed, and we have to make those tough choices. That hasn't happened, and therefore the point about us having a real leadership problem. The leadership problem is that when one is the president of a nation, you're not a president of a party, president of your area, you're a president of a country, and therefore the country's issues are what you need to be trying to solve. I think most of our leadership and those who work under them still subscribe to the notion that public service has become a way to accumulate private wealth. And as long as that thinking persists, it's going to be difficult for the nation's business to come to the fore.
But at the regional level, here we are, there are ECOWAS summits, there are African Union summits, there are resolutions, there are secretariats earning the same international salaries.
That's right.
But it's totally inaction.
I think it's
what
a
is
problem.
The issue?
Part of the problem of leadership is for some of these same leaders to assume that they live in Abidjan, they live in Lagos, they are head of ECOWAS, and therefore they have to make the same amount of money that the UN, somebody who's at the UN Secretariat must be making. That's flawed thinking. That is flawed thinking.
So in a way, let me take us into the next part of our discussion. Essentially, we can say that the failure has been because we have not managed to extricate ourselves from the colonial bilateral relationship.
That's part. That's part of it.
Part of it. Here comes China.
Yes.
It sees no borders. It is putting its face in every African country.
Yes.
It manages to organize meetings where more heads of state attend than the AU summits.
That's exactly correct.
Are we then going to say that maybe China has a better chance because it cuts across and doesn't deal with these bilateral colonial ties?
I think
in terms of it being better for Africa.
Better for Africa. Well, as long as we as Africans understand that we've had an experience up to this time with the West, essentially, England, France, the United States, etc.,
Portugal, etc.,
all those others, and that we have to learn from the mistakes of those times. So here comes China, a behemoth 1.45 billion people, a huge economy, hungry. Here we are, still endowed with these natural resources. A major economy like China needs them, so they come in. Well, from our perspective, China was, I thought, and I still believe that can be a credible source of development funding, devoid of some of those strings that we used to think that we wouldn't have to contend with. But that has not been the case.
No.
That has not been the case.
They bring their laborers here.
They bring their laborers, they have strings attached. They make no bones about the fact that it's a purely cold, calculated business calculation, business experience. And until we wake up to the fact that that is why they're coming, not necessarily because we're both supposedly South nations, and therefore we can band together to create a new international economic order. We may be able to do that. But I think we should learn our experiences from the past and assume and think and believe that we need to change and that we have to negotiate from the position of strength because we have those resources. What do we need?
What do you think will be the peculiar advantages for Africa in dealing with the monolith, if you like, monolith colonial economic interests?
It would be a mistake for individual African countries, as we do now, to continue to believe that the only way out or the best way out will be individually dealing with China. That wouldn't work. It hasn't worked with the West, it wouldn't work with China. I think that's why I like the idea of the FOCAC, the Forum on Africa, for China-Africa cooperation. However, we have to have a dedicated continental, perhaps institution or an office who can look at this and negotiate, not for individual countries, but on those issues that are common. For instance, oil.
Yes.
I mean, how many nations in Africa does China get oil from?
Probably 10
Why don't
or
we
more.
compare notes
Yes.
and try to work together? And I'm not saying we should form a cartel,
No.
but close to it. We'll get better concessions from them.
Do you see that the Chinese of today are any different from the Europeans of 1884?
On one
in
level,
terms of intent.
in terms of intent, not quite. In
Uh-huh.
terms of intent, no. In terms of intent, no. Because ultimately, the Europeans were bent on the colonial experience was at its root the effort to get their hands on what they didn't have but needed, our natural resources.
Yes. Which is exactly what the Chinese are
Which
doing.
is exactly what the Chinese are doing. From
Except-
that perspective, yes.
Except that they cover
different.
it up by building you theaters and
Well, they've learned-
AU
they've
capitals,
learned.
etc.
They have learned their lesson. They clearly know that if they come in and throw in a sub here and a sub there, we'll accept, and that's what's happened. But we need to wise up and understand, as Africans, that 56 years on, at some point, the country has to grow up. And part of growing up is understanding who you are and where you're headed, and not necessarily be selfish about it. And when I say selfish, I'm talking about individual leaders thinking about themselves and not the nation. Until we do that, and that will be ultimately what independence would have meant.
But so what lessons of European and Western colonialism have we learned and are we bringing to the relationship with China now?
Given our relations with China, it appears that we haven't learned too much. But we know what the problems are. We know. We've experienced it. But I'm saying that ultimately the culture that we have, which says that you go into public service to acquire private property, to accumulate wealth.
Public good and for private greed.
Exactly. It has dug so deep into our fabric that almost at every opportunity, every government that has come in has, with different levels of that, played that game. Perhaps we can never ever get away from that thinking, but we need to be conscious of it.
But the whole world is now working around regional economic groupings.
Yes.
So what I mean, Africa is set up now NEPAD,
Yes.
and all these things.
Yes.
I mean, what
you mentioned Lagos Plan of Action before. There was AFSAP.
Now there's NEPAD.
You know, now there's NEPAD. Yes.
What have we learned from the old colonialist experience that we are bringing to our relationship with China?
We learned that we have to be self-reliant.
Yes.
By putting it in all those documents.
Yes.
So why haven't we been able to translate what we have on paper into reality? And that's where the individual comes in. Where have they been trained? What do they know? Do they understand the nature of the problem? And until that happens, we're always going to have fits and starts. We'll take 2 steps forward, as we probably did in the last decade or so.
Yeah, but there's been focus and all these. You mentioned earlier that we should have a much more integrated approach, the FOCA fora and etc.
Yes,
Are there any things happening beyond the summits?
Well, they should be if they're not happening. But I'm saying that at the root of it is a true lack of leadership with our leaders. 56 years on, it will be difficult to continue to lay the blame on on other people. Yes, the external problems still exist, but when are we going to say, okay, enough is enough, this is where we are now, this is what we need to do, essentially to take care of our people, because that is the test. How would Ghana develop?
And Africa. I mean,
or Africa,
but
for that matter.
Week, I mean, you've been here this week, you've been discussing Africa and China.
China's foray into Africa, yes.
Exactly. China's foray into Africa. Were you looking at the perspective of what the Chinese are doing, or what we should be doing also to ensure that we get value added?
That's right.
We
Different
get
people
synergy. Let's look at the African. What do we see is the African move towards creating a synergy?
Clearly, in 2006, for example, when the 48 leaders, which is probably more leaders at a meeting outside of Africa than they ever go to the AU meeting, when they met in China, they were able to see that, in fact, here is another source where we can look at and tap development funding. The question becomes, given your experiences in the past with, sourcing development funds, et cetera, for development from the West, what lessons have you learned and drawn from there to guide you in your new relationships with China? Clearly, we haven't learned too many of those lessons.
But did anything come from your discussions about which could give us hope?
There's no question that the consensus among the conference participants was that if anybody thought that China was here to do good, they've had to disabuse their minds of that. That China is in Africa first and foremost for its interests. And so the consensus bore to be that what Africa needs to do, both individually as countries and as a collective, and always in that sense, the two have to go in tandem, that we have to have our interests permanently and not necessarily worry about other people. We need to begin to negotiate from a position that says we have it, you need it, so we can only give it to you on these terms that will benefit us.
You made a statement earlier, which for me is a fundamental problem that Africa has. The people who fought for independence believe that we had the capacity, the black man is capable of looking after themselves. In the last 50 years and increasingly, the phrase development assistance has come to haunt me. Do you believe in this concept of development assistance?
No, I don't.
Underpinning all
No, I don't. What I believe in the fact that if at any one time you need help, you need to go seek help. There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
The issue becomes, in effort to get to that help, one, you don't understand that in getting that help, you have something that you can give in return, which is even more important. And here I'm talking about our resources. And so the first step is, I may not have the money in the bank, but I'm sitting on something, which is even more than I have in the bank. So how can that benefit me in my relationship sourcing those funds? And I'm saying that we can change the mindset to a place where we don't consider ourselves just people who only can go for external funds to aid us, but we can use and capitalize on our own resources, which everybody needs.
You see, because
when are we going to set up?
I pose this question because tomorrow we're celebrating Republic Day, and the whole concept that the people go and cast their vote and place their power in the House of Elected
and
politicians.
So they can
and all
work
they are
on their
doing is
behalf.
saying that we're going to talk to our development partners. So really, do we need to change governments? Because they're all doing the same.
Well,
do we need to go and vote for
we need to change
politicians?
governments in the sense that if one is not doing the job that has to be done, yes, we need to change.
But aren't they all doing the same job?
Generally, they're all doing the same thing. But, you know, politics is what it is, and people have their preferences. I'm sure you have your own preference. I have my own preference.
But I don't want a preference of who should go and beg for me. I want a preference of who should make things different for me.
Why don't we then say, as I was saying earlier, that clearly the onus is on us to do the right thing for our people. The policies that we enact, whoever is in power. See, right now, it doesn't matter who has been or who's going to be in power. The system is such that we need to begin to think about the objects of development, which is our people. If people are going to be able to have something to eat, they're going to be healthy, they're going to have a roof over their heads, and they're going to have clothes to wear, and a job to do. If we can solve all these basic needs of the first order, I think that at some point we'll be happy to say that when we became a republic in 1960, it was a very good idea that we're now able to decide for ourselves what to do.
Pato, we've been blaming politicians and leaders. We are in a situation right now in Ghana where, you know, our gold mining industry is overrun by Chinese.
Yes.
It's overrun by Chinese because we gave licenses to our own people, and they were so lazy that they went and gave the licenses to the Chinese.
Yes, I don't think they were lazy. I think they were greedy.
They were greedy. Is there any difference?
Very greedy. There's a big difference. You can be a lazy bum, but you wouldn't have anything in your pocket. But most people who are greedy are the people who go and try to grab as much as they can because inwardly and inherently they believe that in an effort to accumulate wealth. And yes, everybody has to accumulate some kind of wealth given where they are to be able to survive.
The reason why I'm saying this is that don't we get the leadership that we deserve?
We do get the leadership that we deserve. And that is precisely why I'm saying that I'll have to, at this point, put the blame on those that we say are our leaders. And if we continue to elect the same people who come in, when election time comes, they bring out the backhoes and give them praise that they're going to develop this road. When election is over, they take it away. Then the people deserve who they get. But ultimately, yes, part of the blame is with the people, but I think the majority of the blame has to be with the so-called leaders who come in and look at public service as a way to privately accumulate wealth, and we need to get away from that
thinking. Did you discuss a potential new paradigm of natural resources staying here and the value added being created here?
Yes, it was a major part of the discussion that there's no way we can continue to maintain that structure that I discussed earlier about always making sure that the raw goes away, whether it's the minerals or the timber or the cocoa or what have you. Now the oil and the gas that we have. We have to find ways in which we can diversify those raws and add value to them. And we can do that. We have something they need. And as long as they need something from us, why wouldn't they listen to what our needs are? That's the point I want to make.
Yeah, I know
we have to understand
I know that's the point you want to make, but the point is that we're not pushing our case hard enough.
That's why I keep saying that our leaders are those that we need to hold accountable. Once they understand that our resources are the strength that we have to change the dynamics and the structure that we've had, we wouldn't go anywhere. It will be another 30 years, and if the leadership that we elect continue to do the same thing, we're going to be in trouble.
From where I sit, I think we can make the Chinese make a difference, but it's up to us.
It's up to us.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
We'll take a short break. When we come back, in this unusual presentation of Tarzan's Take, we'll take our second guest, Professor Anshan Lee, who, if you like, put the Chinese perspective on the Berlin to Beijing story. Welcome back. My second guest in this special program is Professor Anshan Lee. He is a professor of the School of International Studies at Peking University. He is reputed to be probably the leading scholar from China on the China-African relationships. He's been in Ghana this week for that major conference on Africa and China. Welcome, Anshan.
Thank you, Dasan.
First of all, let me thank you very much for making the effort to give us your time. If I could start off by saying, what were the main highlights from the conference, and what did you see as the positives coming from it?
The major theme is China-African relations. In this exchange, and this is a very crucial time. A bunch of Chinese were deported from Ghana, but also we see a lot of opportunities between China and Africa, and China and Ghana in particular emerging. So in this conference, actually, different scholars, professors from different universities, actually from Africa, several universities, and America, and Asia. There are also Carter Foundation, China branch here. So different people express different views on this subject. And the most positive view I got from it is, the first is the African sense of self-reliance. And the second is that they are very cautious about China-African relations. That's very understandable because, after all this, troubles with, other outsiders, I would say. And there's another possible and encouraging phenomena is that many young scholars were emerging. That's very good.
Now, you said people from universities around Africa, Asia, and America. We've had a relationship with China for a long, long time. I mean, I remember when I was about 11 years of age, Premier Chu and Lai came to Ghana. What is so special about the relationship now?
All right, you mentioned this, so I have to clarify one thing. Actually, when before Zhou Enlai arrived in Ghana, there was
an attempted coup, I remember.
Exactly. And so the delegation was at the time staying in one of the North African countries. So there was a heated discussion among the members whether we should still continue this trip to Ghana. And Premier Zhou Enlai said, yes, we should, because President Nkrumah needs more support right now. So we should continue. And he sent 2 special envoys. One is actually the ambassador to Ghana at the time, Mr. Huang Hua, to go beforehand, to talk
come ahead of him.
Yeah, yes. And so they talked. They met President Nkrumah, and the Chinese envoy said, we can cancel all these ceremonial things, and when Premier Zhou Enlai is here, we go to the talk directly. And of course, President Nkrumah was very happy about that, and later it's very fruitful. And at that, exactly in Accra, the next day, they issued, actually the Zhou Enlai in the press conference issued, we called it the 8th principle of China.
Ghana cooperation.
So, but today, I think China, frankly speaking, a little bit ahead.
Yes.
But
I think you are modest. It's more than a little bit ahead. I mean, we are today. China is lending us a lot of money. China is building a lot of infrastructure. But you said something, and I want to take us back You talked about the problems with the mining and the deportation of the Chinese. There is a certain misconception about China now, both in terms of whether the Chinese are taking over our economy physically, and also this perception about whether the Chinese are dumping substandard goods onto our market. So there's a suspicion, a tension between Ghana and China. Can you see what is causing this, and how do we address this?
Yeah, for this, I would say the illegal miners from China, I think, you know, some of them are totally, you know, they don't understand the Ghana, the law. Some of them know, and some of them, you know, just going into contract with some
Ghanaians,
local.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
So I think for this issue specifically, for Chinese, we should, you know, we have, I would say, at least a number of, you know, things we should do. First, proper education to those who are going to the African countries, what they should do and what they should not do. And the second is coordinate the activities with the local needs, and to meet, you know.
But we can't necessarily blame the Chinese if they see a business opportunity and they come and there's an African with a license not wanting to work but to give them the license. Isn't that, do you see that a problem for the Chinese?
Yeah, I'm a Chinese, so
yes.
What I said, you know, I would blame Chinese for some aspect. Of course, my friend, the former ambassador to China,
Mrs. Matikoli?
Kojo
Amo Godfrey, yes.
Godfrey. He said something, I think, very, you know, maybe remind us, you know, or give us some, you know, reminder. That is, Chinese, they are far away, you know nothing about Ghana. They come here, involved this. There must be some
attraction.
Yeah, and
anyway,
the first attraction, and the second some
business.
Let's say medium man, or you know, or some Ghanaians, right?
But let's take this forward, because I want us to move to what I think are the very important issues. China today is developing as a very major economy. It is the center of manufacturing in the world. And because of that, it is buying a lot of raw natural products from all over the world. In fact,
that's right.
Countries like Australia,
that's right,
they have become very rich because they are exporting natural resources to China. But I think for some of us, especially in Africa, because of the colonial past, the worry is if the Chinese come to do business here or even to develop infrastructure, and in return they are taking away the natural resources in a raw form, oil, cocoa, whatever, it reminds us that, oh, maybe there's a new colonialism coming, because that's exactly what happened before. How does China see all of this, the new terms of trade?
I think China, why, you know, there is a misunderstanding of this we called FOCAC, Foreign China-African Cooperation.
Yes.
And this FOCAC actually originated from
the
Africans.
Yes.
So a lot of, you know, especially West media, say, oh, you know, China create this forum for FOCAC to explore and to get into Africa. That's not true, because Madagascar Minister of Foreign Affairs offered this specific suggestions in 1999, I think. But before, a lot of African diplomats offered the same opinion. We have a lot of bilateral relations with West. We have a good relation with China. Why not we create this?
I'm not, see, Prof, my worry is this. I think that the West has its own agenda for which we shouldn't get involved.
All right.
But what I'm saying is that you've given us a lot of money to develop infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
Why couldn't we just have a normal loan agreement with repayment terms?
Mm-hmm.
Why is the loan, this and other loans, being repaid in terms of natural resources? That's where my worry is.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Actually, in early development, reform year of China, China did the same thing with Japan, with Germany. Because we don't have money, we need the money for investment, but we have nothing to pay. So we offered other things, even at very low price. That's what we did before. And I think that is exactly how China moved. Because when in the early time, actually we didn't have knowledge and money. We need this too, technology and money. So we signed the contract. We offered some market, but we get what we want, money and technology. And by technology, of course, we
the know-how,
forward.
the skill, which is not
very important.
The largest manufacturing.
So that's why in the conference a day before, I told my African friends, when you sign contracts, you have to be very careful.
About what you are.
Yeah, and you have to be very clear about what you need. Then you can make a deal. And that deal, from my view, that's a kind of a win-win. You got what you want, and I got what I want.
So you are suggesting that the arrangement emanates more from what we want than maybe what China needs. China needs oil.
Of course. We need oil, and it needs oil, needs cocoa, and some mines, and it needs a lot of these things. And we not only, as you said, we not only buying it in Africa alone, we buy in other countries as well. But for Africa, this is also an opportunity, I would say. So how to grasp this opportunity and make the best, take the best advantage of it? I think that's up to the government, the Ghanaian people. That's in your hand.
Okay. The reason why we are having this conversation is that tomorrow is our Republic Day, when we totally say we have taken charge of our own affairs. 43 years ago, per capita we were twice as rich as China. Today, China, with its 1.5 billion population, is 3 times as rich as Ghana per capita. Now, if I've got you here, you have to tell us, how did China succeed, given the fact that it has a central political system which has got controls, but it has managed to liberate the entrepreneurial skill of its people. Can you tell us how China did it?
This is a very complicated question, but I can answer in my knowledge.
That's why you're the professor, you see.
Thank you. But I think the first one is a very important one. Is we have to have, I would say, a leadership who is determined to make the country develop according to its own way. We know there are a lot of models in the world, American model and the British model, French, Chinese model even. But I always tell my African friends, don't copy others' model, but learn some good things from it and create your own path, your own model. This is the first thing, the leadership.
Yes.
And the second is that we need a stable situation.
Stability is important.
Exactly. Why? Because China had been going on all this, this troublesome, periods.
The Gang of Four.
The long march. Yeah, that's true. So from the modern time, there are kind of a division, also all this internal struggle, and all this in a later ideological struggle. So which, of course, we can because the history cannot repeat, and also history gives you something. You learn something from history. So we think stability is very important, because it provides the circumstance for your development. And Kenya, I think 4 years ago, it's big, and so everything was destroyed, a big ethnic conflict, right, during the election. And Ghana, several coups d'etats. So that also brought the disturbances, unstable situation.
So you would argue that stability may be more important than so-called democratic choice.
Democratic choice.
I know you change your leaders every 10 years.
It's gradually developed. You cannot say today you must be democratic, otherwise I will blah blah blah. That's not a good. Because can I set China as an example? I was teaching a course called the Third World and Development Studies, and in previous years I always quote one. I would say impressive example, which is the China rural population and the urban population don't have equal rates in the representative for the Congress. Okay, I always say the urban got such a
big input,
but with the development in I think 2010 and then they got this equal rights. So this is a kind of democratical, system.
But what fascinates me is how have you managed to allow the entrepreneurial spirit? I mean, China has probably got more billionaires in dollar terms than America, and all the big luxury goods in the world are being sold in China more than anywhere else. But normally you expect that when people become very rich and confident, they agitate more for personal freedom. So how are you balancing the two between?
I would say you are more or less influenced by the West media. You thought China is authoritarian regime and government controls everything, but that's not true.
I'm not saying that.
I know.
I'm not
because
that.
The business actually this has I would say Deng Xiaoping, the leader, he made a great contribution to this. He said the market economy doesn't necessarily
it doesn't have a political model that goes with it.
Exactly.
So you can have
you can socialist system. You can enjoy the same market economy. So this is a kind of mind liberation. So China gradually leave all this the opportunities, and every individuals can go into business and can
But you see, I find it fascinating at the same time we're saying this. But when I watch NDTV and I close my eyes, I could be listening to CNN. Is the Western influence, as you become more affluent, taking hold? I
think there is a kind of exchange of ideas. For Western ideas, we know, a lot of, things we have to learn from the West, because that's actually is a development of mankind.
Capital,
It's not necessarily, for example, the civil servant system. Yes. The Britain borrowed from China a long time ago.
And now it's gone back.
Yeah, so not necessarily all these things, although it appeared in the West countries, not necessarily belong to certain. It's enjoyed by
everybody. Let's bring all this experience back home.
All right.
China and Africa.
Sure.
China is clearly now a very dominant player in Africa. It has got relationships with every country. It assembles more African heads of states than the AU can assemble in the summits between China and Africa. It has donated a brand new headquarters to the AU. Now, clearly, China and Africa see themselves as developing a new relationship that will be hopefully mutually beneficial to both. Now, from where you sit, from both the academic and also with your influence with the Chinese leadership, how do you see all of this emerging?
All these things, you know, as I indicated before, the China and African relations is gonna, as an example, is the first stage very friendly and help each other. In my presentation, I said, Mao Zedong once said, you Africans are fighting against colonialism and imperialism in your continent. That's a great help for us. And also, you understand, you know, the among the 76 countries who supported China entry to UN,
Africa was...
Yeah,
yes.
African got 26. So we Chinese all remember that, okay? And so now this new partnership, because China realized that if your economy is not developed, you will always lag behind. You don't have a voice.
That's right.
So it put a lot of emphasis on economy. There was no quarrel about ideology. There's no internal strife for. Let's concentrate on economy. That's Deng Xiaoping's contribution.
That's right.
But now, China, the relations with Africa developed very fast. And I would say there are some good elements and bad elements. First, I will talk about good elements. China has, from my study or my understanding, has previously two kind of phases. The first is more or less kind of a infrastructure.
Yeah.
Studied a long time ago.
And the second railway.
The second is mining, oil, yes. Energy. This sector. Yeah. And they actually, there are good examples for the infrastructure, as you mentioned, yes. Tazara, yes, Tazara, but also in Kenya, there is a highway, and they have certain numbers. Okay.
Yeah, we have a Ministry of Defense and Ministry of Foreign Affairs, infrastructure donations from China.
But they, they don't call that highway. They call it China Road because they, that means they brought some communists for them.
Okay.
And for the mining and oil industry, I will give you a Sudan example. The Khartoum oil refinery. Yes. Was built, by Sudan and China. Yes. And they trained, people there, and now, a whole system of oil industry from, exploration and the refinery and the exporting.
That's a very interesting. We are winding up our discussion, but what you tell me suggests that. Wouldn't it be better, for example, for instead of transshipping African natural resources to China to turn into value-added good, I foresee a new partnership between China and Africa, where China, having now grasped the expertise and now has the investable money, should now set up factories in Africa so that it can produce the value-added in Africa, and so that Africa can get the benefit of higher returns and more qualified people. I mean, does that sound to you like a good model?
Of course, and I think this is I think that's a point out the direction of future cooperation. And actually, I will give you another example of recent years. In Ethiopian, the Prime Minister visited China. Visited China at the end of 2011. And I visited one of this leather shoe factory in Guangzhou, which and then The next
they took
year,
the factory and put it in
Ethiopia. Ethiopia.
Yes.
And it's called Huajian. People interested can search the network. There are quite a lot of comments on that. And several months later, it started to send out leather shoes to Europe and America.
So
and
I'm afraid we have to end there. First of all, we cannot set up a shoe factory here because we eat the leather instead of using it for shoes. But
you have here
lots of natural resources,
right?
Yes, we can do that.
You can produce a lot of maize and maize oil to export to China. It's a big market.
Fascinating. We could be talking for hours. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for being part of the show. We'll be back next week. Good night.